Las 7 etapas del imperio son un proceso que se repite en la historia hasta hoy, y es básicamente el péndulo social, que va desde el dinero de calidad a divisa de cantidad, y luego de nuevo a dinero de calidad. Siempre tiene 7 etapas y siempre acaba con el oro expulsando a las divisas devaluadas, y funciona así. Etapa 1. Un país empieza con dinero de calidad, que son oro o plata o divisa respaldada por oro o plata. Etapa 2. Conforme se desarrolla económica y socialmente, el Estado empieza a tener cargas económicas, añadiendo capas de obra y gasto público. Etapa 3. Conforme crece su influencia económica, crece también su influencia política y aumenta los gastos para financiar un ejército cada vez más grande. Etapa 4. Pone a trabajar a su ejército y el gasto se dispara. Etapa 5. Para financiar la guerra, roba el patrimonio de sus ciudadanos mediante la devaluación de la moneda, con metales básicos o transformando el dinero en divisa sin límites de producción. Etapa 6. La pérdida del poder adquisitivo es percibida por su población en los mercados financieros, impulsando la pérdida de fe en la divisa. Y etapa 7. Hay una retirada desde la divisa hacia los metales nobles y activos tangibles. La divisa colapsa y el oro y la plata suben de precio, hasta que se iguala la cantidad de divisa que se creó. Este proceso transfiere la riqueza a aquellos que han previsto la debacle y se han posicionado antes en dinero sólido, en dinero respaldado por oro o por plata. Estamos en la sexta etapa, principios de la séptima. El oro comenzó su revaluación en el 2001, cuando estaba a $250, pero aún estamos en los primeros pasos. Esto es el oro y cómo recupera el valor respecto al aumento de la base monetaria. Esta es la base monetaria de Estados Unidos, que era lo mismo que el oro en circulación. Entonces fue cuando creamos la FED en 1913, inflando la divisa para la Primera Guerra Mundial, y tuvimos más dólares impresos que oro respaldándolo. Y el valor del oro subió de 20 a $35 la onza, y cuando eso ocurrió, el oro volvió a recuperar la base monetaria imprimida mientras. Esta es la misma gráfica, esta vez hasta 1971. Al entrar en la guerra, volvimos a inflar la moneda hasta 1959, momento en el que los países se empiezan a dar cuenta de que hemos imprimido más dólares de lo que se podía respaldar. Estados Unidos pierde la mitad de su oro entre el 59 y el 71, pero siguieron imprimiendo dólares. Otra vez la gráfica, la primera, esta la segunda, ahora hasta 1985, y he añadido una segunda línea. Cuando se usa la tarjeta de crédito, en realidad estás creando divisa. Esa divisa que has creado se queda en circulación hasta que alguien cancela el saldo de la tarjeta. Así que los créditos de tarjeta sin pagar es efectivo en circulación. En 1971, Nixon nos saca del patrón oro y el oro se convierte en un activo, una materia prima, divisa, dinero de cotización con libre fluctuación, y recuperó el valor de la divisa en circulación de nuevo. La misma gráfica, antes hasta 1985 y ahora hasta hoy. Por cierto, ahora medimos en billones, Empezamos con millones, pasamos a miles de millones y estamos en billones. El rescate de los bancos y la relajación cuantitativa. Y este es el aspecto de la cantidad de divisa disponible hoy, y anuncian la relajación cuantitativa 3, creando 85 billones de dólares al mes y con una proyección hasta 2015. Esta es la proyección para que el oro asuma la base monetaria de hoy. Eso sería entre 13.400 dólares la onza, para que la historia se repita, para que ocurra lo mismo que en 1934 y 1980. Creedme, en los 70 la gente se sobresaltó cuando el oro estaba a 35 dólares la onza y Nixon nos sacó del sistema Bretton Woods. Todas las predicciones indicaban bajadas del oro porque ya no habría demanda monetaria. Cualquiera que dijera que el oro llegaría a los 100 dólares era considerado un lunático. Llegó a los 850 dólares, 24 veces más que el precio de inicio. Cuando escribí mi libro estábamos aquí en cuanto a base monetaria, para que se repitiera la historia, hacía falta un precio de 6.000 dólares la onza. Hoy hacen falta 13.400 dólares. Y si proyectamos la subida de 1980, cuando recuperó el valor de base y crédito vivo, 24.000 dólares la onza. Ese sería el precio. Pero la Fed, esta vez la Fed ha anunciado que va a seguir imprimiendo hasta que se recuperen el empleo y la economía. El oro entonces tendría que llegar hasta los 26.000 dólares la onza. Y si incluimos la revalorización de 1980, nos plantamos en 47.000 dólares la onza. Ni siquiera me gusta medir el oro en dólares. Si se mide en un precio, eso no significa nada, es el valor. ¿Cuánto puedes adquirir con el material? Si hay inflación y el Dow llega a los 30.000, quizás el oro llegará a los 60.000. Si hay hiperinflación, quizás el Dow llega a los 30 billones y el oro a los 60 billones. No importa. En cualquier caso, el oro te conseguirá 14 veces más activos papel de lo que consigue hoy.
People could feel that there's something wrong. You know, even I was doing these real estate wealth expos in 2006 with Robert Kiyosaki, and I would get up there and I would say, there's something really wrong with the world economy. You should be able to feel it right now. How many people can feel there's something wrong? And every hand in the audience would go up. Then I'd start talking about gold and silver, and I'd be absolutely swamped at my booth afterwards. So in just the past few years, people have an innate sense that something has shifted.
This is the CPM Gold Yearbook back from 2008. Jeff Christian of CPM Group produces this, and Jeff is one of the premier experts on precious metals in the world. And here, this is official transactions, and that means central banks' sales or purchases. And his projection for 2009 is that they're going to sell about 4 million ounces into the market in 2009. And if we grab the 2010 yearbook, the numbers are in, and instead of selling 4 million ounces, they bought 15 million ounces. I can't tell you what an enormous shift in this bull market that is. That means that governments around the world are starting to distrust the dollar, that they're starting to panic. They have, you know, it's when one country blinks, that's when this whole thing is over with. This means the dollar is toast eventually.
When the gold price starts to go bonkers, then everyone's going to want to know what the story is.
There's a couple of charts in there. With the Federal Reserve, we have hard data, and I've got some data from the Weimar hyperinflation, where gold went from 100 marks an ounce to 87 trillion marks an ounce. But what you see with the Federal Reserve data is that the price of gold, the will of the public and the free markets do this over and over and over again throughout history.
We are in uncharted waters. We are in, I think, as Jim Paplava said, the perfect storm. I think, and what's interesting about it, from my perspective, is that we're just starting to see, you know, the sea starting to get rough. We're nowhere near what I believe is coming a few years out, which is like the huge tsunami that's going to really rock the markets.
Well, it's pretty simple. We're creating too many dollars.
We're in this period where governments are abusing their currencies worldwide, and gold and silver are going to account for all of this.
You know, one of the things I say is, all frauds typically end rather suddenly and rather swiftly. And this is why I think in the past we've seen such parabolic curves upwards in the gold price at times, or even just very quick revaluations at times, because, in all currencies, because their currencies, when they start to die and people lose confidence in the fraud, people aren't going to gold and silver in mass hysteria or in a it's a sudden, when it happens, it is a sudden realization of rationality that is hitting the marketplace, and it's harder to stop rational thought than anything else. It's not people going crazy for gold and silver, it's them waking up out of their delusions of paper money. Mm-hmm. And just like Enron was a fraud and collapsed suddenly, so too will our dollar.
When money does start flooding into gold, when gold gets to 1,500 or 2,000, a lot of people are going to start looking over at silver that'll only be $50 an ounce by then and start buying silver.
When everyone realizes what's happening, it's going to be a gold rush into this thing that will be it'll just blow people away.
It'll be the biggest one in history.
Yeah, it's going to make even in the shares, it's going to make the NASDAQ boom look like nothing. And the difference will be this will be for real, and that was, that really was a bubble. Now, it doesn't mean that we won't have a bubble in the gold market and silver markets, but the move itself will be intrinsically real, and
I believe that this is the next big bubble, is the precious metals, commodities, but precious metals especially, because of the helicopter drops they're doing right now. Of all the money they're creating, that has to find a home. Well, the stocks had their bubble in 2000. Real estate had its bubble in 2006. And, what's the next asset class to go into a bubble?
Well, then the real difference is that gold and silver are tiny little markets. And as you say, is investing money in the hoards, the institutions and pension funds, and even the general public, when they actually realize what's going on and they all try to get in this little market, that's when you get the ballistic kind of move.
Yeah, extraordinary fireworks.
I think so.
Yeah.
Simplemente, no hay tanto oro y hay mucha divisa que seguimos imprimiendo cada minuto de cada día.
If we do have a currency collapse, like there have been other currency collapses around the world, people will go to the precious metals, and the precious metals will have a price that we can't imagine. You might even get to the situation where people will not want to accept dollars in exchange for their gold and silver. They're going to want
no matter how many zeros.
Now, that silver quarter is worth about $6. And I believe it'll go much higher than that. In fact, I believe it'll get to a point where you will not be able to exchange dollars for gasoline, because those countries and companies that sell gas will realize that the store value of the dollar is completely worthless, and they will not sell their precious resource for something that can be printed out of thin air. When that reality hits the world, only people who have silver will be able to buy gasoline. There will come a time when the dollar's value will decline so much that people will be begging for real silver.
They can't do a thing about this. It's too late. It doesn't matter. What matters is how smart you are now. If you think these guys are going to save your family, I think you're in for a sad, rude awakening.
Governments try to perpetuate that which keeps them in power. People are not elected to political office to change things. They're put there to keep things the way they are.
And if there's one piece of advice that I would give to your viewers, it's that we're still early on in the cycle of moving out of financial assets, moving into tangible assets of all sorts. And the easiest way to acquire tangible assets is to accumulate gold and silver.
It's hard to get family and friends to pay attention sometimes, but here's my question.
getting back to gold and silver as a hedge against a worst-case scenario, a dollar which now inevitably is going to go much, much lower. Doug Casey at Casey Research is saying that inflation is now going to start running at 20 to 40% per year. Let's talk a little bit about that, and let's talk about gold and silver at these prices for folks that don't own any. They're not too late, are they, James? I say no. What do you say?
I agree with you, 100%. And I'll speak firsthand. Recently, somebody passed away in my family, and they basically left some funds in their will for me, and basically those funds are going to be good this week. And so I'm sitting here with a chunk of change that's going to be sitting in a bank, and there's no way I'm going to leave it there long. I'm going to turn and convert it into real money immediately, gold and silver, both, a mix of both, probably a majority silver. But it really comes down to the question is I don't feel comfortable holding that in the bank. I just don't, not for longer than 30 days. This is going to be turned into real money very quickly. Just given the antics that are happening, I know long-term, long-term just being even 12 months from now, that bet is as safe as it gets. And, I feel very assured that this time next year, we'll be talking around $2,000 gold, and we'll be talking about whether or not $60 or $70 silver is cheap. And I'll say the same thing. Until the dollar runs its course, I'd much rather hold gold and silver. That's basically how I feel about it. I think the problem is a lot of people don't understand the fundamentals of the whole thing. They don't understand what is real money and what is fiat currency and what are the histories behind the two and what happens when the fiat currencies go to zero. When they understand that, then they know that, well, I don't want to hold fiat currency. I know the history of this. I know that fiat currencies, they go to zero, and we're headed that way with the dollar. I saw what happened firsthand in Argentina, and everything looks like that's where we're headed. Where the currency, the Argentinian peso, was more or less thirded in a matter of 30 days or so, and I see the potential risk of that happening here. So for me, personally speaking, I'm definitely going to be converting it, and I don't feel comfortable holding dollars. I just don't. And that would be the same case if we were in Europe. If I was sitting in Europe, I'd say the same thing about the euro, and I would say the same thing about any other fiat currency, because they're all, the reserve currency is a dollar, which means that in essence, all these other currencies are using the dollar as their reserve. So what happens when the dollar goes to putt? I mean, they all...
Todo parece bastante terrorífico. Aún así, esto va a pasar. Y lo único que puedes hacer es jugar tu mano. Las buenas noticias es que el oro y la plata siempre acaban poniéndose a la altura de la expansión de oferta de divisa, básicamente, la voluntad popular y los mercados libres. Cuando los gobiernos hacen esto a su divisa, la diluyen, la devalúan, en algún momento aparece la inflación. La gente nota la pérdida de poder adquisitivo y vuelven a por el oro y la plata y elevan el precio de los metales del país hasta que llega o excede el valor de la divisa en circulación. Este proceso ha ocurrido una y otra vez en la historia, pero esta vez ocurre a escala global. Jamás había ocurrido en todos los países a la vez. Esto significa que es la mayor transferencia de riqueza en la historia. Por tanto, es la mayor oportunidad de la historia y no va a ocurrir otra vez en la vida.
All you can do is play the hand that you're dealt, and it's your choice whether you want the wealth transferred away from you or toward you.
You bet there is no other side. You're either silver and gold or you're doomed. That's exactly the way the world is always working. That's the way it's working right now. Turn on the television, watch with the price of gold. Look at the dollar going down, gold's going up, silver's going up. That's exactly the way it's always worked, and it's always worked that way, and it's working that way now. And why is anyone surprised? Why is anyone surprised? It's always worked like that.
For the past 5,000 years.
That's right, 5,000 years in a row, it's worked exactly that way. It's happening that way now. And ooh, wait a minute here. weird. Beyond weird.